We pick up with Miller still on his ferry from Ceres to Eros, where a guy who looks way too clean-cut for this trip starts chatting. Miller is, as he eventually puts it, a city belter. He grew up in the belt, but never actually traveled anywhere, lived his whole life indoors, and never went on a ship, except possibly to look for booze. This guy has been making the trip regularly, though. He's a Mormon, and he's going to be on the Nauvoo, so he wants to acclimate himself to space travel. Miller asks what will happen if they travel for 100 years to the planet they've picked out, only to discover it's the space equivalent of Cleveland. What do they do then? He says it only means that God wants them to keep looking, because it's about having faith. Something Miller has a hard time with. The one thing he ever truly cared about besides himself got him beaten, nearly tossed out an airlock, and fired. That doesn't do much to make you think someone is watching out for you. More like someone who's supposed to watch out for you is being distracted by cat videos. Well, the Rocinante has finally reached that rock, and it turns out it's a rock. Glad that's sorted. They go looking around. Maybe they missed something, and sure enough, Naomi finds a ship stashed inside a crevasse, a stealth ship. After the titles, we check back in with Tycho. See, when Fred Johnson collected that Martian, Lopez, he located a chip on the body and is trying to find out what's on it without triggering a booby trap. So while they putter with that, Holden brings the spy down to look at the stealth ship, who insists it has to be Martian. No one else can afford to build them, and that they can't salvage this for Fred Johnson.
Fred Johnson is a terrorist.
Whereas I am a perfectly honest corporate spy. He's coming along on the mission to look for survivors.
Suit up. You're coming with us.
Meet what? Why?
And meet your new bodyguard.
And I will always love you. Except Amos practices tough love. His love wears brass knuckles and has mother tattooed on its bicep. Holden warns Amos not to actually do anything, or else, but Amos has never been bothered by or elses. This is a man who brushed off having a gun pointed at his head. As they head over and look around, we start to get the sense that, while Julie Mao had been wearing a jumpsuit from the Scopuli at the beginning of the series, this is the ship she was actually trapped on. Yep, they find a suit from the Scopuli aboard.
This is the ship. The one that killed DeCann.
Ships don't kill people, people kill people. They split up to search for clues, Holden and Naomi checking out the engine, while Shaggy and Scooby head to the flight deck, and Alex on the Rocinante sends out a drone to look things over. The fact that this is likely the ship that killed their shipmates makes Holden chatty about it, and prompts him to return to the question of why someone with Naomi's skills would settle for working on the Canterbury. He was there because he'd been dishonorably discharged. Alex was there because he was honorably discharged but had nowhere left to go. Amos was there because, as he says, he's got a lot of past in his past. But Naomi could have been a big muckety-muck on Tycho, or some other much more prestigious and lucrative work than trying to keep an old ice hauler running. It's like having Phoenix Wright read through your credit card terms before you sign. Well, Alex has found that every one of the airlocks on this ship were opened, meaning it was either vented on purpose or somebody burnt a roast. But the shuttle bay is empty, meaning that someone escaped, and by now we, the viewers, have the pieces of the puzzle. Julie Mao we saw escape from captivity. Miller has a shuttle from the Anubis in an Eros dock. Fred Johnson has an alias Lionel Polanski needing a pickup. So Julie must have vented the ship, then taken the shuttle, sent out the message to Johnson, and headed off for Eros. The question we're now left with is why she vented the ship. I'm going to guess it was that abomination. It's always a good reason to go for the extreme option. Amos spots a safe and gets Naomi's permission to start setting up battery backup, while she puzzles over the fact that the reactor was shut down properly, but after someone had to break in here to do it. Of course, that's when Holden spots said abomination on the reactor, and yep, abominations are the worst. It's the black mold of space reactors, let me tell you. On Earth, Ehrenreich has sent a warship to Tycho claiming reactor problems, but really to search for evidence of Fred Johnson's stealth program. Admiral Souther says this is a bad idea that will only inflame the OPA, and Avasarilla that killing Holden will prevent them from getting the answers and make him look like a martyr too. Ehrenreich isn't convinced, and the discussion is sidelined by news that the former ambassador to Mars, the one Avasarala tricked into giving that information away about the stealth tech facilities, remember? Well, he just killed himself. And on that cheery note, back to the abomination. Amos confirms for the viewer that this is the Anubis, and Alex points out that there's one piece of the puzzle missing. Why did Lionel Polanski hide this ship here instead of just taking it? Why leave behind the most valuable salvage there is to escape in a shuttle for Eros? It's like having your own untraceable B-21 bomber and dumping it so you could take a bus to Detroit. But Amos does have an interesting new addition, that the Anubis was on its way to Eros from Phoebe Station, the place where everything went wrong and had to be torched, remember? Well, just as Holden fills the others in on that, the abomination starts to activate. We'd seen little bits of that doing it around the ship, but this stuff's really waking up now. Holden and Naomi haul ass away from it, and she shuts down the reactor again, and sure enough, the abomination goes dormant again. Well, if that's not the time to go, I'm not sure what more they'd need short of a facehugger running around the place. So they leave, and with full treatment for possible biological contaminants. This does not involve rubbing gel on each other because this show is made by grown-ups. So the Rocinante leaves, and for once, no ships are blowing up. Spoke too soon there. Well, Miller's ferry has finally arrived on Eros, finds the berth of Anubis, and tries to pump the dockmaster for information, claiming Julie Mao is his daughter. I mean, the resemblance is uncanny. He offers him the bribe plus. That's a bribe, but also has... The plus means better. He finds Lionel Polanski's name, but then is arrested. Luckily, his buddy that called about the Anubis shuttle is a cop, and while he's able to bring Miller out and feed him, he says he's not going to go poking through security cameras looking for Julie Mao. Not because it's unethical, but because the new security company is, well, incredibly crooked. They shut down the cameras for maintenance and use the blackout to set up shakedown rackets. These are not the kind of people you screw with.
When I got kicked off the force, I gave you that hat so you keep your head.
And because he looks so damn good in it. Miller won't be talked out of his pursuit of Julie Mao, so Semi tells him she's at the Blue Falcon, a flop house, under the name Lionel Polanski. While he goes to look into that, Fred Johnson has word about the approaching UN ship and that the chip has finally been cracked. Detailed recordings of the battle. There's something else worrying too, but something even worse is that spy leads the Rocinante crew to the Blue Falcon. See, he asked if he helped them find Lionel Polanski if they'd let him go. The reality, though, is that he's leading them right to the Black Ops team's trap. Things are tense while they wait, and then finally ask after the alias. So Amos steps in, seeing as how he has experience with these kinds of places. He also has the instincts to see when someone is likely there for reasons unrelated to their usual business. Like public murder. That's pretty much only common in Old West saloons. Amos puts some down, but the group is pinned down, and the ops team's last two men standing have them dead to rights. But that's when their guardian angel appears. Well, their guardian true neutral anyway.
Should just follow you around, don't it, kid?
Ought to get that on a business card. Miller is not part of the Holden fan club and is less willing than most to humor him. So when Holden grabs his shoulder to stop him, Miller explains that the cops, who are just thugs in badges on Eros, are on the way. So he's heading to room 22 where Julie Mao is, and will not put up with any more being jerked around by this jerk. They head up there, and the place stinks of sweat and vomit, and there's a Scopuli jumpsuit on the floor. Plus, everything's smashed up, except Naomi thinks that this wasn't from a fight. It was deliberately done to eliminate any power source, like shutting down the reactor on the Anubis to put the abomination to sleep. Well, Miller finds her in the bathroom, Julie Mao, naked, covered in bits of alien-looking shit, like on the reactor, and very clearly dead. Well, where could things go from here when the end of the line for both of them is a corpse? Let's go on to episode 9 and see.